Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're exploring how infrastructure, arguably one of the most traditional and risk-averse industries, can truly embrace and embed digital technology and artificial intelligence as it trains and inspires the next generation into the sector. No question that construction and infrastructure are the backbone of the UK economy, yet we continue to face a critical shortage of skills. As the pipeline of work grows, we see older, experienced professionals retire without being effectively replaced by the next generation. Add to this the impact of technology, which is radically transforming, or it should be, the way that we design, build and maintain assets, and we have a cocktail of opportunity and challenge. Well, to help us navigate this situation, I'm joined today by Kirsty Ingleson, Head of Digital Innovation and Artificial Intelligence at Leeds College of Building. Kirsty will be expanding on our discussion today at a series of workshops to be held next month at UKREIIF, the UK Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure Forum. In these workshops, Kirsty promises to challenge the idea that innovation is just about new gadgets and instead argue that the real revolution is in how we think, how we learn and how we build confidence in an age of uncertainty. From the power of reverse mentoring, where Gen Z apprentices might just be the one teaching the site manager, to the ethical tightrope of AI-driven decision making. Well, it's a complex and challenging future. So let's get stuck in. Let's get stuck into some of the critical questions around how we train the next generation of surveyors, engineers and site managers for a digital and AI-enhanced workplace. Kirsty, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's an absolute pleasure. Well, let's start with the big education picture, Kirsty. In many ways, traditional education models are no longer aligned with the realities of today's learners who are digital natives and have grown up with the screens and information at their fingertips. What's the biggest single legacy habit in education you reckon that we need to unlearn immediately then?
It's definitely around how one model doesn't suit all. It doesn't in life and it doesn't in the classroom. We're all so different and we need to tap into that. There's not one PowerPoint that will serve the whole class. There's not one way of working that will serve everyone. And I will say the job of an educator is so tough. They go above and beyond always. And I think there is a real need to diversify what we do in the classroom. And I think that digital and AI can support us to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if AI can provide those instant answers at your fingertips whenever you want them, does therefore the role of a teacher shift from being a source of knowledge to being a curator of judgment, perhaps?
100%. The role of an educator is shifting. It's needed to have been shifting for years. You know, it's really archaic, but we need teachers to be facilitators, creators, champions for these students, ambassadors for these students, and they need to inspire students to be thinking differently. And like I said, meet the needs in multiple ways, offer multifaceted, multi-sensory resources so that can bring those students to life. Yeah,
I mean, you talk about, it's an interesting phrase you use, and you describe learner identity when it comes to embracing technology in education. What do you mean by that learner identity then?
I think it's around embedding innovation into learning repeatedly so that they become confident in trying, adapting and exploring. They don't see themselves as, oh, this isn't for me, I've not tried that, I'm not sure about that. When we bake it in, when there's no pressure to get it right, and when students are supported to figure it out rather than provide a right answer, that's the confidence and character. It doesn't stay in education, it moves with them to the workforce, and that builds a workforce that experiments, that adapts and that evolves.
So you actually see students' approach to the sector really change them when they realise that their value isn't necessarily only in what they can calculate and the sums and the kind of those technical bits, but actually in how they innovate and how they behave.
Yeah. Even just a recent example with a plumbing lecturer who we were having a conversation and he was saying, I need to teach what's right and what's wrong. It's detrimental for safety and there is no space for innovation. And, you know, we had a gentle conversation and I said, what if a student could come to you and think completely differently about this process and it could be safer and it could be quicker and it could be more efficient? Where are you allowing space for that? And the next week, he had flipped the learning. So he just said to students, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Where could you be creative here? And he didn't teach, they taught him. So I see that happen.
Brilliant. I mean, when I see that Leeds College of Building was recognised last year as Construction Apprentice College University of the Year, and also Best FE, HE, Further Education, Higher Education Provider Supporting Careers in Construction. Tell me about the college then. Who are your students?
So we are the UK's only construction-only college. So we're very niche, we're very landmark. They've been going a long time. My granddad went to this college.
Oh, really? Wow. Goodness me.
It's very well known in West Yorkshire, but it's also very well known nationally. Nationally, people send their students to us, and we are predominantly, our students are predominantly apprentices.
Right. So how's the college moving away from the traditional learning techniques to a model that mirrors the evolving nature of the modern workplace? What's changing there?
We are supporting staff to do things differently, and with that, students grow. So when the staff confidence grows, and when they have these new toolkits and new digital technologies, and when they're willing to learn from each other, that's where we're seeing a real change there.
Yeah, right. What about your background then? How did you get into this? I mean, clearly your grandfather went there. You're a local. How do you end up working at the college?
So I've worked at a different college for the last 7 years in digital transformation and digital teaching and learning. And I've kind of fallen into AI because back in 2022, when Gen AI boomed, lots of colleges were banning it, and I was like, no, we cannot. So I just put a cheeky post out on LinkedIn to say, colleges are banning it. Who can come together? Let's support each other through this change. And from there, I've created this network. I've researched everything to the hilt. I've practiced, I've failed, and I ended up leading the college in AI. And then recently, I have joined Leeds College of Building to do that also. So I'm fairly new to construction, although I've supported construction areas in our other college, and that were a big department with many, many learners. But like I said, LCB is landmark, and it's on a bigger scale. So I am always excited to learn. I'm always showing up to learn, and I'm just loving the area-specific tech, and I'm loving learning more about construction and applying what I know there.
Well, I mean, I get the impression that when it comes to AI, you're either a bloomer or a zoomer. You're not a gloomer or a doomer.
Yeah, I mean, I always go in with this critical lens, and I think that's needed. But definitely, I do think, how can we? I'm always thinking about how I can support people to think differently. You can go in with a critical lens and being aware of the risk, but also you can go in really giddy and excited like me and think, right, what can this do? What is a sticking point for me? And how can I solve that with a digital tool or AI? And that's kind of drove my career in teaching and learning for the last decade.
Yeah, well, we'll get stuck into a lot of that in a moment. But clearly, we need to have more of this giddy excitement around the industry, that's for sure, when it comes to getting the next generation in. But infrastructure is a high stakes, it's a safety-first industry. I mean, what are your main messages going to be during your workshops at UKREIIF in May?
Collaboration all day long. I am looking for the space. I'm providing something, the safe space to explore, low stakes, have a go. You've got support from me. But also, I'm always there to kind of connect with people as well. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. Finding out more about what's going on in the sector, so then I can fit in and squeeze in and support other areas, and they can support us, because I definitely think that we thrive together. Yeah. I'm looking to make connections as much as I'm offering a safe place to experiment with AI.
God, I'm interested to see how you pitch technology or technological change and innovation to a sector where, I don't know, in many ways doing things differently is often perceived as an inherent risk. Is it risky? Is embracing AI and technology risky in your view?
Yes, it can be. And I think we're not going into it blind. I think whatever role, rank, wherever you sit in infrastructure, education, we have to be mindful of that risk. And yeah, that goes without saying. But I think how we pitch it, and how I'm going to pitch it at UKREIIF, is I'm going to try and inspire people and support people and create some safety. And I think everyone needs to do that at scale. And just an example of risk in the sector. Mandy Ridyard, who owns Projamax, and they make parts for planes. And this is a story I tell all the time because we need stories of inspiration. We need people to think, oh, I could do that. Look what they've done from taking this risk. Anyway, they make parts for planes, and it takes 60 minutes to quality assure this one part for the planes. They're a massive company. They're in Bradford. Over 80% of the planes in the sky right now will have a part on from Projamax, so they're huge. So the quality assurance process takes so long. So they've got a new piece of equipment that were meant to reduce that. So Mandy had cleared, they were a long-term member of staff. She'd cleared the diary and said, go play with it and see if you can reduce this process. This new member of staff come back and they've reduced it to 30 minutes. That is massive. And there were an apprentice there, 17-year-old, and he said, oh, Mandy, would you clear my diary? Could I have a go with it? So she did. So this is risky. These are parts for planes. They're providing very many. And the student got it down to 15 seconds.
15 seconds?
15 seconds. So absolutely life-changing because Mandy had leaned into that risk.
Yeah. So, I mean, that begs the question, is a digital divide in construction less about access to software and tech and more about lack of cultural confidence then? It's about the people and their approach to it.
Yes, although I do think it's worth mentioning the digital divide, especially where we are in West Yorkshire. Access to tech, it's just not a given. 9% of people remain offline where we are, so that could be because they can't afford. It could be lack of access to devices. And just in West Yorkshire alone, 25% of people lack the essential digital skills for the workplace. So there is digital divide, 100%. And that does impact because if we have 25% of our workforce right now, the workforce we're training for their next steps that don't have the access and the digital skills that they need, how is that going to continue in the workplace? They might start earning more, they might then have access to the internet, but where's that space where they could grow and try and take the small risks to then practice for the bigger ones? So access to digital is everything. We're trying to provide that at LCB, and the education sector is working so hard to provide that. But definitely there is a lack of confidence there as well. But I imagine that stems from it's ingrained in us that these skills are not bred into people from primary school, secondary school and further education.
Yeah, and presumably that also goes into the supply chain as well. I mean, are we seeing small and medium-sized businesses being left behind maybe because of their inability to invest in the kind of technology that maybe larger firms have got at their fingertips?
Yeah, I think they are at risk, and I wonder who's supporting them. I've done some work recently with Liz Barclay, who's the Commissioner for Small Businesses, and where do they turn? It was difficult for us to find some support for SMEs. So I think there is a gap there, and that's growing. As well as being an educator, I own a business too, a small to medium business with my husband, and we work in gates and automation, and I'm trying my hardest to kind of pull him along all the time and showcase lots of things to him. And, he's created new mechanisms and he's done things differently because of AI. Yeah. But I'm doing that for him and wonder who's doing it for other people. So we are, at the college, we're really dedicated to supporting the community too. So we are supporting SMEs. We're hosting training sessions for sole traders and small businesses so that they don't get left behind, because they are getting left behind right now and they are at risk.
Well, let's talk a bit more detail about the ethics and I suppose the safety of using AI and digital technology in the profession. Where does the professional liability end and the algorithms fault begin?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one as well. And small scale, it's the end user that's responsible. Yeah. So how can a workforce support their staff with that? There's a recent case where someone's lost the job. They've been they put a bank statement into I think it was ChatGPT, but there has been no training for this staff member. There has been no control, no central control at that business. So small scale, it's with the end user. So what are businesses doing to support the end user to understand those risks? But large scale, I don't know, and I do wonder, and I definitely think there's so much need for exploration and discussion and just opening it up for people to communicate around this, because I don't have all the answers. I recall I went to an event recently and they were laying a new road and they were talking about the process in this, and they wanted an autonomous vehicle. But there was so much red tape with how the autonomous vehicle got on site. And once it's on site, then who is responsible? Let's say if it had a crash, if it broke down, if it did something wrong. Is it the person that's bought it? Is it the person that's built it? I mean, in other countries, this is happening all the time. Autonomous vehicles are building things. But in the UK, it definitely feels like there's we feel more restricted, and I don't know where that kind of responsibility lands.
Yeah. Well, I suppose there is a key thing which we constantly talk about when it comes to the use of AI is about maintaining that human in the loop.
Yeah.
But I suppose what you're highlighting there is deciding who exactly that human is.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think? I mean, you've got some ideas about what infrastructure might have to do to ensure that the next generation, I suppose, doesn't overlook that human in the loop, but also kind of tackles this whole issue about, well, who is responsible? How do we overcome these red tapes? Because if other countries are already doing it, what are we doing wrong in the UK?
Yeah, exactly. And I think human in the loop matters now more than ever. And digital and AI tools cannot be central to the way that we operate. It has to be humans central to the way that we operate. And context is everything, and AI doesn't pick that up. So I think the value on the human matters now more than ever.
So from the college's perspective, I mean, how do you overcome the risk that the next generation, well, they're not creating a generation of professionals who know how to use the tools, but they no longer perhaps understand the first principles of why it said what it said? Yeah.
And that risk is so real, particularly because AI can produce answers so quickly now, can't it? And so convincingly. Yeah. And it can be tempting for people, and it is, and people do this, to rely on it without fully understanding what's been said. And I don't think the solution is to remove AI. I think it's about how we learn to use it and creating situations where people question those outputs and they explain the reason and their understanding and principles behind what they're doing, not just accept the first thing that's churned out. I think sometimes AI produces some answers that blows people away, but actually when you dig a little deeper, it's just fancy words and there's no substance to that. So understanding why is critical for making safe, informed decisions on sites.
But I suppose it also makes sure that what's coming out and the solutions are not just reinforcing old biases. Particularly in an industry that's already striving to bring in new ideas, bring in new people, etc.
Yeah, we naturally have built-in bias, which is why AI models have naturally built-in bias. And bias is so obvious when you're working with AI. I was reading a recent piece researching marking students' work, and if that student had a non-British name, it would reduce the marking attributed to that grade. So we really need to be cautious. Will it automatically select males in that process because it's a male-heavy industry? Will AI understand that? So definitely, I think that it's a theme that runs throughout this and hopefully will run throughout UKREIIF. The human and humans in the loop are so important and they should be central to this.
Well, whether you call it bookending or whatever, but I mean, one of the things that we came across at the recent Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit in London last November was the concept of shadow AI, and the reality that within companies. The reality is that most people are using AI in their work, yet the majority of companies didn't actually have a business strategy for using it. So therefore you have all these people who are merrily going ahead and doing their own thing, but no real control over it. I mean, is that something which you recognise?
Yeah, I recognise that. I see that every day. And I think lots of educational establishments are beyond that. I think that we're very much leading the way. However, I can see that in the sector, in the construction sector. And I think businesses need to take responsibility of those using that AI. You can't bury your head in the sands. Well, everyone's using it. Everyone's everyone's on with it, whether we like it or not. Well, that is the case, but you can guide and support and help people to get the most out of it. And I do think there's a lack of support for companies and businesses, whether they're large, whether they're SMEs. Who do they turn to for that support, and how much are people charging them for that? You know, there is some really unfair pricing and some really unfair mis-selling around AI right now. So I do wonder where the support comes from. I think there's a real need to work with education, and strengthening that link with education would be really beneficial to the construction sector.
Does the Leeds College of Building, do you have a formal strategy or an ethical AI framework for students that helps guide their thinking around it? Or is that something we're still building on the fly, so to speak?
Yeah, so we've got some safe use guidance, and digital skills framework is in the making, where AI is baked into all of that. But the framework is just the framework, and without... it's just so minor without the spaces for people to kind of question and troubleshoot and query and understand. You know, when I first started, I had people messaging me saying, right, where's the guidance? But we need so much more than that. They need to understand how to question it. They need to understand, challenge what they agree with and what they disagree with. So I think a framework is just the half of it. The right culture and supporting the growth of that framework is more important, and that's more powerful.
Yeah. Let's have a quick romp through some of the potential benefits and maybe some of the potential risks. Start positively with the benefits. I mean, you've highlighted reverse mentoring as a way to upskill the older generation and empower the new generation. I mean, how have you seen? You mentioned the example about an apprentice coming in and revolutionising that testing regime. Are there any other examples of where 19-year-old apprentices, for instance, have actually changed the perspective of a seasoned industry veteran when it comes to the use of tech and AI?
Yeah, I think this happens all the time. We just don't label it and we just don't say it. We have access to new tools and new training at the College of Building. So an example is we've got some new roof tiles. They're not even in industry yet. Our students were trialling them out. They're fantastic. I know lots of roofers. So I said, have you seen this? We've got these in college now. And they're like, no, we've never heard of it. So quite naturally, our students will be going back to their sites. They will be going back to site managers. They'll be going back to their colleagues to say, did you know about this? It's cheaper, it's more resilient, it's longer lasting. We know about it because we've had them resources sent to us because we're very much informed by the sector. Yeah. And also... we work with trainer assessors, so they go out onto site and make sure that their apprentices are working towards their qual. And I think that this is worth its weight in gold. One of the members of staff said to me that the younger generation knows so much more than me. I'm worried when I go out to site because they know all this new legislation that they've learned, but the student is always willing to relay that. So they've got so much to share. I think age doesn't equal success. So I think when we find golden nuggets like that member of staff that are absolutely okay to say that sometimes the students know more and embrace that, that's where we get like real powerful change.
Yeah, and I suppose it's also those students having the confidence to actually think differently, but then share that thinking as well.
Yeah.
Getting into the tech though, I mean, do you think AI-driven simulation and VR, we hear an awful lot of... I did an interview recently about Hospital 2.0, the new hospital program, where they're really championing industrialised construction. I mean, do you think the use of this technology to create this more industrialised industry, do you think it opens doors up for a more inclusive career path, for perhaps bringing in people who have felt physically or culturally excluded before?
Yeah, I'd hope so. I think the biggest opportunities with tools like VR is that they reduce some of the barriers that traditionally make construction feel inaccessible. So they allow, especially we've got an immersive room, it allows people to experience environments and roles in a safe, controlled way without physical risk or without the pressure of being on site straight away. And we can really bring it to life at Leeds College of Building. We even have our immersive suite. Students can be submerged in experiences where there's even scents that are factored in. So there might be an electrical electrical burning smell there. It really is as close to life as you're going to get. So it can build the confidence, particularly for individuals that might not have seen themselves in the sector or that have never been exposed to it before, and just helps challenge perceptions, because people can see then a range of roles available. And that's a challenge, I think. Some people just assume there's certain roles in construction. So many roles remain hidden.
Yeah,
I feel. So bringing that to life in a space gets people to see different roles and different opportunities.
Well, that's a point that was made actually this week on the podcast in the last episode with Sam McCabe. She pointed exactly that out, that there are so many roles in the industry that people don't necessarily know about, and it's in many ways we've got to inform the educators to make sure those points are got across. I mean, one of the things we also hear a lot about is bringing technology in really clears up professionals, the industry operatives' minds, to actually think creatively, think about innovation, rather than having to worry about, I suppose, what you might call the drudge work of data entry or scheduling. It really allows them to really free up their minds to be more creative. Is that something which you're seeing being taught?
Yeah, 100%. If we are reducing the mundane tasks, the administrative tasks that take us away from being in the classroom and take us away from being creative with our students, that's where we have the space to think. And when we free up our headspace, so if we have a fantastic tool that we've bought in that supports the creation of resources. So if staff can now very quickly create resources, have a critical lens over it, that frees up their headspace. And that is a sweet spot for creativity. Sometimes you don't realise how creative you can be until you've had that space freed up. And in education, you don't have the gift of time. I know that it's like that in lots of sectors, but it's fast paced, it's difficult, you're against the clock, there's so many constraints, very similar to construction. So if we can swoop up some of the tasks that can be automated to free up some time to drive innovation and creativity, then that's what we'll do, and that's what we are doing, and that's where we're seeing the biggest changes.
Yeah. But brilliant. So many positive benefits. But on the other side of it, there are some perceived risks. Just a touch on some of those. I mean, one of the issues is around becoming over-reliant on AI for whatever optimization or designs. Is there a risk that we might lose creativity or the individuality of maybe the architectural soul of what we're actually designing in that infrastructure, simply because we're constantly referring back to stuff that's already been done before? I mean, is that something you focus on with the students to make sure that they are aware of that and trying to avoid it?
Yeah, with staff and with students, you can't just throw AI in for the sake of it. You can't just jump on a bandwagon if it's not meaningful to us. So you definitely have to dig deep to find out what are the sticking points, what are the things that take too long, what are the things that are impacting our mental health, our well-being. Often in education, it might be planning and marking. Now we have tools that will do that. They do have a lecturer at the centre of that always, and they will check them. But these are well-researched, well-established tools that are doing a great job for educators. And it has to be suitable, and you can't just think, we'll adopt AI at the workplace. I think you really have to dig deep and see, well, what are the issues first of all, and is it solving this issue? Because if it's not, let's not buy into it, because that does add pressure. Yeah.
Well, building on that, I mean, another issue, of course, is we need to protect the industry from innovation for innovation's sake. I mean, tools that, whether digital tools or innovations that may look good in a UKREIIF presentation but fail on a rainy Tuesday on a building site. I mean, how do you guard against that?
Well, it's the same in all sectors, isn't it? I went to a landmark tech event where there were a sea of digital and AI tools presented to us. And it's so easy to get swept. It's so easy to think, wow, and I think sometimes it is that you're wowed, that you think, this is great. But actually, we really have to have this critical lens of, will this serve me? Do I need it? Is it a business need? Is it supporting my business?
Yep.
And I think it's always take someone else in, especially when it comes to purchasing, especially any digital and AI tools. If you're not sure, find someone that is sure and get them in when someone's trying to sell you something, because sometimes they're selling us a dream, and like you said, it don't come to fruition on the ground.
Well, I mean, Kirsty, I get the feeling that that you are very able to offer that dose of reality.
Yeah.
It's kind of because, I mean, no, but that's kind of what's needed. It's kind of, as you say, don't get swept up with it. And just looking forward then to the future. I mean, you say you want to create change makers. And what's the one personality trait? Perhaps not a technical skill that the construction professional of 2030 must possess. What are you looking for in your students to say they're going to really fly?
Yeah, curiosity, and I'd coin that with the confidence to speak. And funnily enough, you mentioned that earlier. Public speaking is such a skill, and speaking matters now more than ever because everything sounds so samey with AI. It's producing similar sentences, or with the M dashes, or with the typical words that have no substance but they're long and they're fancy, so people buy into them. Yeah. So we are starting a national campaign in construction departments to support students and staff in public speaking, because I think that is a skill now that's going to be needed beyond anything. When someone goes for a job, it would be amazing if they could say, yes, I'm confident with AI, I know how to utilise it, but I also can speak around it, and I'm comfortable and confident speaking to you and any stakeholders. High achieving educational establishments, we really need to tap into that.
So if there's one thing you could change about the national curriculum for construction today, I mean, to prepare students for this AI-driven world, what would it be?
Less teaching to the test. Let's just change the way that we're doing that. In an AI-driven world, access to information is so much easier. So the real value is not in providing that information. It's how people interpret it. It's how people question it, how they use it to make decisions. So for me, it's about combining strong foundations with the ability to think and adapt and apply, because that leads to better, safer outcomes.
Yeah. Well, finally, then, just to take us back to where we started, I say you're talking at UKREIIF in May. Why should folk come along to your workshops then? What are they going to learn?
Well, it will be fun. It will be creative. It will be a safe space to explore some tech and AI. And I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. It's just a space where we can come and we can speak and make connections, maybe build some further collaboration, because I think together we can achieve more. So I am showcasing some low stakes, low risk tools that you can have a go of. You can have it in your hand. There'll be an expert there to support you with it. So I suppose come and grow your confidence and let's connect. I think that there's always something that someone doesn't know, so I'm there to learn and connect too. But yeah, it will be a fun AI playground.
Brilliant. Well, Kirsty, I look forward to joining you at UKREIIF to hear these thoughts and these ideas expanded and to press a few buttons and see what you got there. So, and of course also to hear the discussion that you hopefully stimulate at events. So it's super important stuff. Really, really, really challenging, but loads and loads of great opportunities. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for joining me today on the Infrastructure Podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Real pleasure. But sadly, Kirsty, that's all we've got time for on the podcast now. But there's more in the pipeline as we continue to probe the big issues facing the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Kirsty, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.